This is a cold case. It's one of the most infamous unsolved cases in U.S. history, and it begins like so many do with a killer on the loose. A person dubbed the Zodiac Killer terrorized Northern California in the late 1960s and early 1970s. They killed at least 5 people, but may have been responsible for many more. What made this killer different from others was their apparent desire to draw attention to themselves. Not only did they kill, they also sent cryptic letters to the press detailing their crimes or boasting about them. Those letters helped earn the killer their moniker, the Zodiac Killer. Even today, no one knows who this person was or if they're even still alive. So let's take a look at this bizarre crime spree, the theories behind it, and why it continues to fascinate us over 50 years later. This is the infamous Zodiac Killer. It all started on Christmas Eve 1968 when the teenagers were shot in the back while sitting in a car in a secluded area outside of San Francisco. Both victims survived the shooting, but were left paralyzed. Then less than 2 weeks later, on New Year's Day 1969, a couple was found dead in their home. They had been shot multiple times and their house set on fire. And then just 4 months later, another double murder occurred. This time a young couple was found shot to death on a secluded beach. As you probably realized while reading those descriptions, the victims were always alone when they were attacked, making it difficult for the police to understand what exactly was happening here. And there were other similarities between these attacks that made the police think that they were connected. For example, each victim was shot with a .20 caliber weapon, specifically a type of .20 caliber bullet that was only manufactured for 5 years in the 1930s. Additionally, in each case, the murderer left behind some kind of calling card, a symbol or message that suggested they wanted to be found out, but the police didn't know that yet. At the time, they just saw 3 separate murders and a couple of attempted murders. Then, in April 1969, another body turned up, a young woman who had been strangled to death. She was found in a part of town known as the Presidio, which just so happens to be where the headquarters for the U.S. Army's 1st Special Forces are located. Later, it would be determined that the bullet that killed her was the same kind of bullet used in the other killings, connecting this murder to the others. But it wasn't until later that the police really understood the scope of the crime spree they were dealing with. In August of 1969, a man called the police and told them he had recently seen a couple being murdered by a man fitting the description of the suspected killer. He said he witnessed the entire thing and could identify the killer in a lineup. But when the police brought the alleged killer to the man's house, he refused to come to the door. When they finally talked to him, he said that he must have misidentified the man because he couldn't actually see his face during the attack. Then, in October 1969, another witness came forward saying they had seen a man matching the suspect's description acting suspiciously around the time and location of one of the murders. When the police went to question this man, they discovered that he was not only the same age as the suspected killer, but he also lived close to where many of the attacks took place, and owned a boat named the Free Spirit, which matched the description of a boat seen near one of the crime scenes. When the police searched his house, they found a number of items linking him to the murders, including blood-stained clothes and a mattress with what appeared to be human hairs on it. Plus, they found several weapons, including a .20 caliber rifle, a .20 caliber revolver, and a shotgun, none of which matched the bullets used in the murders. The man, however, claimed that the blood was his own and that he cut his finger while fixing an outboard motor. The police weren't convinced and they arrested him for one of the murders, though they lacked sufficient evidence to charge him with any of the other attacks. During his trial, the man's defense attorney tried to poke holes in the prosecution's case, pointing out that the blood could have come from anywhere and the witness testimony was unreliable. After all, witnesses only saw the killer from a distance and couldn't positively identify him. The jury agreed and acquitted the man of all charges. He was later suspected of committing several other murders, but was never charged and died in 1985 without ever being convicted. But in the meantime, more murders occurred and more letters showed up. In September 1969, a woman was found stabbed to death in a part of San Francisco. 2 months later, a man was found shot to death on a lonely stretch of highway. Again, both victims were alone when they were attacked. And in both cases, the killer left behind cryptic notes suggesting that they wanted their crimes to be linked together. Then, in December 1969, another letter arrived at the San Francisco Chronicle. This one was accompanied by a drawing of a clock face with the minute hand pointing to the number 11 and the hour hand pointing to the number 10. The killer wrote that the drawing meant 10:07, referring presumably to the time that the previous murder occurred. This letter effectively connected all the killings together, and the police finally realized they were dealing with a serial killer. Even crazier, though, is that the police later discovered that December 21st, 1969, was the day that the man they had arrested earlier, Arthur Lee Allen, moved into his new house. Could this be a coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe the killer was taunting the police by rubbing his new address in their faces. Remember, the police searched his house and found blood that could have been the victim's, but they never charged him, so maybe he knew he hadn't been implicated. Still, Arthur was put under surveillance and eventually was even briefly rearrested, but again, he was never formally charged. As far as we know, the last crime committed by the Zodiac Killer was in October 1970. A young woman was found shot in the back of the head. Although she survived the attack, she could not identify the shooter and the killer was never caught. After that, the letters stopped coming and the killings ended. Over the next few decades, various people would come forward claiming to be the Zodiac Killer, but none of those claims panned out. Today, the case remains open and the killer has never been conclusively identified. So who was the Zodiac Killer? We may never know for sure, but one thing's for certain, the police had their chance to catch this person at least twice. First with Arthur Lee Allen, and then when another suspect was identified through DNA evidence. That man, Gary Francis Post, died in 2018 before he could ever be charged. Maybe one day we will figure out who was behind these brutal crimes. But for now, we can only speculate. Many have claimed that the killer was a member of the military station at the Presidio, which would explain why they knew about the victim's secluded locations and how they managed to evade the police. However, the only thing connecting him to the military is the fact that he was stationed there once, more than 20 years prior to the murders. Others believe that the killer was someone else entirely, that he was a drifter who roamed the country killing people and taunting the police. This theory is supported by the fact that many of the victims were young women traveling alone, something that fits the profile of many serial killers. Regardless of who he was, one thing is clear: he was incredibly intelligent. Intelligent enough to taunt the police for years, intelligent enough to avoid arrest, and intelligent enough to get away with murder. So what do you think? Do you have any thoughts on who the Zodiac Killer was or why he did what he did? Let me know in the comments below. Also, please remember to like and subscribe. It really helps me out. And as always, thanks for watching.